Good evening. My name is Jatin Nathwani. I'm professor at the University of Waterloo and the founding executive director of the Waterloo Institute for Sustainable Energy. I would like to welcome you to the Perimeter Institute for Theoretical Physics and acknowledge that we have gathered on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. The Perimeter Institute is situated on the Haldeman Tract, the land promised to the 6 nations that include 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. Tonight's event is part of the Affordable Energy for Humanity Innovation Lab being held here in Waterloo this week and is supported by the Waterloo Global Science Initiative. We are presenting tonight in collaboration with the True North Festival, which showcases our community assets across the Waterloo region. AE4H is a global consortium of researchers and practitioners committed to ending energy poverty through collaborative innovation, capacity building, and clean technology. AE4H was founded in 2015 by the University of Waterloo and Karlsruhe Institute of Technology in Germany. We have now grown to 170 plus members from 50 institutions in 25 countries, and our members develop and proliferate new technologies, policies, business models, and in unison focus on the critical cultural and human aspects of understanding the energy access challenge. Before we get started, we will hear from Paula Caldwell, Director General of Global Affairs Canada, Canada's Pan-Africa Bureau. Paula?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you to the Waterloo Global Science Initiative and Perimeter Institute for hosting this great event. We were just having a little chat. I mean, the energy from the True North event is obviously energizing the whole city, to the point that I thought I was going to be late because I think there was a jam there. People are trying to come to this event. I'm really happy to be here because not only am I a Director General of Pan-African Affairs, I'm also Canada's trade champion for Africa in the federal government. I also have several different hats in terms of gender and inclusion, diversity in Africa. So it's my very great pleasure to speak with you at this particular event. As all of you know, Canada is the world leader and innovator, and we're ranked first in the G20 and fourth globally, and on the 2017 Global Clean Technology Innovation Index. So the last 2 years, there's been 13 Canadian companies that have been named to that prestigious Global Cleantech 100 list, which identifies the most innovative and promising clean tech companies from around the world. With all of this prestige that we have in Canada, we're a good brand in Africa. And African countries want more Canada. Last week, and actually I just got back, we were just trying to figure out, I think 48 hours ago, I led a delegation of 92 people, including 70 representatives of 21 Canadian companies, along with our trade commissioners and key public sector partners, to a very successful Africa Energy Forum that took place in Portugal. And it was all about clean tech and transforming our energy future. It included the signing of a memorandum of understanding, which I signed with the Minister of Finance in Ethiopia in public-private partnerships to unlock opportunities. We have many opportunities in Africa, and they really look to Canada as a choice and preferred partner. We had a climate finance pitch where 6 Canadian project developers and some of our best companies in transforming our energy future pitched their projects to 20 investors. We have investors who are very interested in what is going on here at the Perimeter Institute. We are on the leading edge, on the cutting edge, of some of these transformative technologies. So I look forward to meeting, our great Canadian clean tech entrepreneurs here to learn more, to listen to you. For me, every day I learn how great Canada is in this space. We have to help, and we've promised to help the world in poverty reduction, in especially empowering women and girls. But in Africa, 2/3 of our population in sub-Saharan Africa are without access to reliable power, and we need to support them in getting energy access. Our Trade Commissioner Service, of course, is here to help entrepreneurs and Canadians succeed in the global market. And I'm very happy to have here today, I just want to point out Claude Gendron from our headquarters, and is Sonia, did Sonia make it yet? Anyway, Claude, so any other questions? He's got the cards. Please connect with him or myself for any help. We're part of an amazing structure that some people don't know, and all day we've been in discussions with our Canadian entrepreneurs and companies. The Trade Commissioner Service, we're in 166 missions globally. We're there to help you penetrate other markets. We're there also to help you connect with research institutes. We're very committed to having the Canadian technology help in poverty reduction worldwide. We're also immensely proud of our support to the African Institute for Mathematical Sciences, or AIMS, through our partnership with IDRC, that's the International Development Research Center. They are training a critical mass of scientific and technical talent in Africa, capable of driving progress across the continent. And as many of you know, Neil Turok, who founded AIMS, is a director emeritus of this Perimeter Institute, and we're very proud to support AIMS. Our 5-year, $22.6 million commitment, which is what we have with IDRC and AIMS, is going to focus on the development of climate change adaptation, mitigation solutions, a strong emphasis on women scientists, and getting women into the STEM world, if you will. We also, if you've read some of the late articles, the next Einstein, and we have an Einstein fellow, the next Einstein, we believe, will come from Africa. So on that note, I would like to close by wishing you all a successful event, and I'm so happy to have been invited to come and speak with you briefly. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup, tout le monde.
Thank you, Paula, for joining us this evening and for providing your perspectives on the Government of Canada's priorities in Africa. I'd like to introduce you now to an important champion in our community's energy landscape. Manfred Conrad, President, CEO, and founder of the Cora Group, was born and raised in Germany. He came to Canada in 1963, established the Cora Group in 1978, and has spearheaded it to become one of Waterloo Region's largest commercial real estate development companies. Its latest star addition is the Evolve 1 building, where we actually have our offices on the North Campus. It is also Canada's first zero-carbon, net-positive energy building. Manfred is truly committed to the support of institutions within our community, including, amongst many, the Conrad Center for Business, Entrepreneurship and Technology at University of Waterloo, the Manfred and Penny Conrad Institute for Music Therapy Research here at Wilfrid Laurier University, the Conrad Center for Performing Arts, and the Hope Spring CADSER Support Center. The Conrad Center for Business, Entrepreneurship and Technology, CBET, now is on track to becoming one of Canada's premier graduate schools focused on entrepreneurship. In 2015, Manfred was inducted into the Waterloo Region Entrepreneur Hall of Fame in recognition of the positive impact he has had on fostering sustainability within the regional economy of Waterloo. Manfred, unfortunately, is unable to join us this evening, but in his place, Adrian Conrad will make a few welcome remarks for you. Adrian?
Thank you, Justine. It's a very big pleasure to be speaking at an event like this tonight with my passion for sustainability and my family's passion for sustainability and the environment. As you know, Manfred can't be here tonight, but sends his regards because both he and my mom, again, very passionate about what we're speaking about tonight. My name is Adrian Conrad. I'm Cora Group's Chief Operating Officer since 2016. And I'm here because I see a crisis that can be solved, much like many others here. For Cora, we're looking and seeing how we can help address climate change. And we're doing that with what we know best, and that is real estate development, clean energy, and really building amazing teams. For many of the people here today, it's about creating clean energy solutions to parts of the world that the grid has really failed to reach. So at Cora, we've been developing sustainably for over 2 decades because it's the right thing to do. And we're quite proud of our most recent project, Evolve One. It is Canada's first design-certified, zero-carbon, net-positive energy building. But what's significant about that is it runs on 100% clean energy. It is designed to generate more energy than it consumes on an annual basis, and it generates zero net greenhouse gas emissions from operations, actually negative greenhouse gas emissions, if you can figure that out. But what's also important about this is that we're showing Canada and North America that we can build with a high degree of sustainability, but also be financially viable without compromise. So I say financially viable because we're a private company. We've built Evolve One without government funding. So we've done that completely as a private family company. And we are leasing out at the same market rates as other comparable new buildings in the market. And I say without compromise because what we're finding is our sustainable solution is creating space that is just as desirable, if not more desirable, than other buildings in the market. So if you think about it, highly sustainable, financially viable, and more desirable. Interesting. So how did we do that? We came together a few years ago and we hired Cleantech. They're an amazing architect engineering firm. But that's what we would usually do. What we did this time is we engaged our contractor, our subcontractors, our suppliers. We actually engaged our tenants and entrepreneurs in the community. So we knew to create change, we had to involve a number of people that were passionate or shared the passion for our vision. And I think we created something pretty special. When we look through globally what's going on, though, we're also seeing a new generation of entrepreneurs who are also integrating common business sense with environmental stewardship. So we're seeing a change. So at Evolve, we've tackled climate change in our small way with what we know. We used a bunch of existing technologies in a new way with some new information systems. Doing some research on what's going on in Africa, I'm seeing much of the same thing. We're seeing amazing entrepreneurs using what I see as existing technologies in a new way with new information systems. But it begs me to wonder, what are we going to be able to achieve and what problems are we going to solve with new technologies that are coming? I mean, I think there's a lot to come. So for me, I see tonight, we're facing some big global challenges: climate change, clean energy development, universal access to clean energy. But I'm confident we can solve these problems. So I'd like to give a warm welcome to tonight's speakers, panelists, and really look forward to the discussions ahead of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adrian, for your remarks and the inspiration you provided to our community. Tonight's presentations will include 3 lightning talks by individuals working in clean tech entrepreneurship in Africa, followed by a panel discussion where we will investigate the challenges and opportunities these entrepreneurs are facing. There will be time for questions at the end, and so we can all engage in a lively conversation as we head out into the night to enjoy the rest of the True North Festival activities here in Uptown Waterloo. So without further ado, I will introduce all the three speakers in the sequence, and then they'll come and make their presentations. Let me introduce the speakers. Peter Nieko co-founded Mandulis, a clean tech startup and social enterprise focused on developing and deploying new technologies and approaches to deliver energy that is affordable, reliable, sustainable, and capable of driving economic development in urban and rural communities. Mandulis leads the development of Earth Energy, which will be Africa's largest grid-tied biomass gasification power plant, as well as the off-grid Reparle project, using renewable energy to power agriculture and enhance the livelihoods of thousands of rural smallholder farms in Uganda. Our next speaker after him would be Sebastian Manchester. He's the Chief Technology Officer here at Jaza Energy, a Halifax-based company that serves last-mile customers in rural Tanzania with off-grid solar energy. Jaza is building a network of renewable energy hubs in communities where customers can take home battery packs that are used to power lights and personal electronics. A single hub provides affordable and reliable access to electricity for up to 100 households. Jaza has constructed approximately 50 such hubs in Tanzania in the last 2 years. Sebastian's experience includes extensive work with sustainable energy technologies, including solar, wind, and energy storage. Last but not least, he'll be followed by Samson Onjek. He's the Chief Officer of Corporate Planning at Kenya Power, the country's largest utility, which owns and operates most of the electricity transmission and distribution system serving over 6 million people. He has played a leading role in a review of Kenya's electricity strategy, which supports accelerated energy access. Currently, Samson leads a team with Kenya Power that is assessing alternative models for electrification and strategies for achieving universal energy access by 2022. So now I will sit down and welcome our speakers. Peter, please. Peter Nieko.
Right. I thought you'd have something up there, but I'll just speak to it instead. Okay, great. Awesome. So, good evening, everyone. It's great to be here. First day in Canada and first day in a lovely town of Waterloo. So, the future has a name, a wise man once said, and its name is hope. A tiny flicker of light that feeds on hope is enough to shatter the shield of darkness. At Mandulis, we deliver renewable energy and value-added services to address the many challenges that are faced by rural farming communities. These challenges are not only close to my heart as a founder, but actually tells the story of my early childhood in Africa and many others. The reality is that over 1 billion people across the world live without access to electricity. And the majority of those are farmers for whom no electricity means no agricultural processing. So they sell their crops straight from the fields at a minimum price. This perpetuates the cycle of poverty. And on the other hand, over 2 billion people across the world cook with unsustainable fuels. And this burden is heaviest on women and children who walk 3 hours every day scavenging for firewood. And now when women and children cook with this firewood, they're forced to inhale so much smoke. It's like smoking 2 packs of cigarettes each day. And that leads to over half of death amongst children from indoor house pollution. I know it does sound sad and everything, but in all that, there is an opportunity to make a difference. Agriculture and agribusiness in Africa is a huge opportunity. You've got, billions of mouths across the world that can be fed. Food prices can actually go down. But to do that, we have to invest in sustainable and productive and affordable energy, so that farmers are able to add value to their crops, improve their livelihoods, and make the world a better place at the same time. So we've realized that we can do that. What we do in Uganda at the moment is farmers bring us the crops, and we add value to that. We process it to high-value products. It's a different way of looking at energy, not just electrons, but actually the productive side of it. And when we add value to farmers' crops, turning corn to flour, it doubles in value, triples in value. Suddenly, they have a better income. Then the waste from that process, the corn cobs, the rice husks, the groundnut shells, that's the actual fuel that fuels our energy plants and also gives additional income to those farmers when they sell the waste. And we use biomass gasification, which is a technology which is quite old, but quite appropriate because, it allows us to create methane and hydrogen. It's basically rocket fuel, generate electricity, but what comes out from that is biochar, clean cooking fuel. And that replaces charcoal, replaces firewood. And suddenly we've gone from, the waste husks to clean energy. And in the process, they're happier. They can now sell their crops, at a better value. Once you turn corn to cornstarch, Coca-Cola, Diageo can actually purchase that. And so we do that for our farmers. But that's quite crucial because it means when we now have to sell them electricity, they can afford it. When they have to sell them clean cooking fuel, they can actually afford it as well. And by having a people-centered approach that goes from the bottom up, it benefits everybody. That's the gold dust for us, waste. Agricultural residues to clean cooking fuel and electricity, helping us tackle energy security, food security, deliver climate resilience and poverty alleviation. That's our pilot plant in northern Uganda. You can see it's in a beautiful environment out there. 80% of Uganda's 40 million people live without access to electricity. But we feel that by going off-grid, we're able to reach more of them a lot faster. And we still do grid-connected projects as well. We've got one big one that we're developing in the town of Gulu in the north. But what we decided to do is to link investment into the urban electricity development with, rural economic development surrounding areas. So when we are developing a 20 megawatt in a big city, we get 16 villages around it where we develop smaller off-grid projects that, deliver agricultural waste to the main project, and suddenly you've got incomes going to the rural farmers. They go from, $1,000 a year to $3,000 a year in income. It's not much, but it's an incredible change in the communities where we work. We work with lots of partners, and that's quite crucial because we can't do this alone. And so we're really thankful for them joining us on our journey to power a future of hope. And that's my team. And I'm wearing the suit so that feels like they're here with me. and I'm glad to be here. Thank you so much for listening.
Okay, thank you so much, Peter. That was very cool. My name is Sebastian. I'm CTO at Jazza. I'm based between Halifax, Nova Scotia, and Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, and wherever else I need to be. Kind of always on the road. Jazza is the last mile energy company, so we're focused very much on the rural communities in Tanzania. And what drives us is really the ideas behind these two quotes. So, the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed, and climate change affects us all, just not equally. I think the theme here is there's this imbalance with technology. We've got this rapid advancement that's benefiting most of the planet, but leaving a huge population behind. In climate change, the imbalance is that the countries that are least responsible are going to suffer the most from the devastating effects of climate change, which are already happening, and that's all of our problem to solve, but especially ours here in Canada. We grew out of a charity called Community Forest International. We're not a charity ourselves. Jazza is a for-profit company, but I think that the philosophies that started CFI are important to share here because we still hold those very core to our mission as a company. And Jazza started with a simple idea, planting trees to help communities build resilience in the face of climate change, especially these communities that are going to face it the soonest, which are small islands. So it started on a small island called Pemba in Tanzania. They planted over 2 million trees, and the philosophies there are that that economic development and climate and environmental stewardship can go hand in hand. They can work towards the same goals. That the communities we work in should be treated as customers, not just as beneficiaries. And that there's so much to learn from those communities, and the lessons that we take from there can help us solve these complex problems, like climate change and technology access. So what we do, we worked for about a decade in Tanzania on CFI in the charity. We spun out Jazza as a for-profit. The focus is really how can we provide our customers with the ability to power what they want when they want. So we focus on rural communities and delivering clean energy to every household in those communities. Thinking about the African energy revolution, I think, is important to think about the technology evolution that's been happening over the past few decades, and this reimagining of how we can deliver products and services. So thinking about global like telecommunication systems and how they leapfrogged the traditional means of connecting billions of people, a task which seemed impossible, and mobile money, which has become the most widely used digital currency in the world, is mainly used in sub-Saharan Africa. And so thinking about energy delivery, Jazza was very much focused on reimagining how we can do that and building a system from the ground up. And this is the system we came up with. It's a solar energy system we build in the community that charges portable battery packs that our customers carry home to power electronics like lights, phone charging, TVs. We hire exclusively women from the community to run these hubs, and we train them to become the business and technology leaders of their communities. And we try and leverage the existing technologies, this has been mentioned, to be able to iterate quickly and deliver the best product we can to our customers. Some of the things, energy is actually the easiest part of what we do. So in thinking about the energy revolution, I kind of feel like that part is solved. It's all these other complicated issues that go into building and delivering a great product and a great service to our customers. That's what we focus on the most. We've had to learn how to iterate very quickly to deliver that service. So over the past few years, we've gone from this rat's nest of wires, a very hacked together prototype, to a completely plug and play system. We've gone from lead acid batteries that we bought locally and strung wires ourselves. I spent hours crimping light bulbs onto wires, and have gone to this lithium battery pack that collects data on how it's being used and sends it back to us over the cloud. And so through that rapid iteration, we're able to get products to market faster and learn from our customers faster, and that just spins this flywheel of learning and understanding our customers, which I think is so important in building these solutions, is understanding if what we're building is actually useful and delivering value. We've taken a similar approach with the buildings that we deploy. These hubs have gone from a brick and mortar building that we hire a local builder to install on site, to a completely prefabricated building that we assemble in a manufacturing facility that we built. so that we can just drive the cost down, make them easier to assemble, and make the most comfortable facility for the women who are actually running these hubs. But it's all about the customer focus. Everything we do, the customers are at our core. We want to understand what the problems they're facing and making sure that the products we're delivering are actually solving those problems. One of the things we've learned is that those problems are quite different depending on where we are. We launched on a small island off the coast of Tanzania where most of our customers just wanted a kerosene replacement. They wanted better lighting in their home, and we built that. When we tried to launch the same product on the mainland, that was not the problem that our customers were facing. Kerosene wasn't a thing. Everyone had their own solar system. The problem was that the batteries failed every 6 months and they had to keep replacing them. And so the problem we ended up solving is not a kerosene problem. It's building a more reliable product that's overall a lot cheaper because the replacement cost of this battery is gone. We've learned things like our customers leave the lights on all night long, which was something that's totally surprised us. But with the battery that we just launched, we're collecting data on how energy is being used throughout the discharge cycle. And like the first time we took the big batch of this data and ran it and analyzed it, we see that the lights come on at 6 p.m. every night and they go off at 6 a.m. like clockwork. And it was just, it clicked that like the assumptions that we have about how people are using energy, my assumption is that energy is so valuable, it's going to be conserved, people are going to really ration it out. It's not the case, and we need to be very careful about the assumptions we make in the products we deliver. And then regional variances, like the industries that drive economic activity in a region from one to another are totally different, and seasonality plays a big role in how people can afford energy throughout the year. And so designing products and services that can meet those variations in seasonal income are very important. This is the Jazza team. We're 100% Tanzanian. We don't have any Canadian staff in country. We do hire some interns from University of Waterloo, which I will shout out to, but we're very focused on building a Tanzanian operation. I spend time there as much as I can, and our CEO does as well, but we've built a team that I'm very proud of, and this is really the reason that we've been able to do what we do, is because there's so many great people behind the machine. So that's all I've got. Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited about the rest of the week here, and yeah, thanks for coming.
Thank you very much. As introduced earlier, my name is Samson Ondiek. I work in Kenya Power. Kenya Power is the main utility, transmission, distribution, and retail utility in Kenya. Going to be a little bit different from the previous two presentations in terms of the issues that we are looking at. I'm going to look at how technology is playing a critical role in helping us achieve our electrification or improving the access to electrification. So this is a screen that has been shown earlier, showing how Africa looks like in the evening. The light tells you areas where we have electrification. We have the northern side of Africa, then we have the western side of Africa, the southern Africa. But if you look at the middle of the sub-Saharan Africa, most of the country are still in the dark. In the ranges of about 630 million people are still not able to access electricity. This is an issue that, of course, it's being addressed from at the universal level in our SDG 7 that looks at ensuring that everybody by the year 2030 then have clean and accessible, clean, sustainable, and affordable energy supply by the year 2030. This, again, was reinforced further by the African Union in the Agenda 2063 that also kind of encouraged all the governments to ensure that this particular target is actually achieved by the year 2030. Most governments took it up, And a lot of effort has gone into trying to ensure that this actually is achieved. In Kenya, for example, the target has even been brought closer, not only at 2030, but to be done by 2022. This is a map of Kenya. For those of us who have not been able to get an opportunity to visit Africa and most probably visit Kenya, we have two parts of the country. Where you see the green lines and the red lines are the areas which are concentrated where we have the grid expansion, where most of our activities are concentrated. The upper part and the northern side of the country is a bit semi-arid, and we have very little presence in terms of grid expansion. And that particular area then provides a very good opportunity for us to do off-grid solutions so that then we can achieve that universal access. Currently, we have about an estimate of 1.5 million households that live within those particular areas where we cannot be able to reach them by the grid. To do that, then we have two programs that, as a utility and as a country, that we are focusing on. We are looking at last mile connectivity. Some of the previous speakers have talked about it. It's really trying to ensure that anybody who can be reached through the grid then is netted in and is provided for access using the grid. And then any other person, majority on the northern side of the country, then are provided electricity through the COSAP program. COSAP is Kenya Off-Grid Supply Access Program. That is a program funded by the World Bank and in collaboration with the government of Kenya, the European Investment Bank, the African Development Bank, and the French development agencies. All of them come together to ensure that then there's a platform through which the communities who are living at the northern side of the country could also get access through either standalone solar projects or development of mini-grids or microgrids that then could be able to support the electrification. This is an example of the last mile customers. And when you talk about the last mile customers, these are the marginalized rural communities who are usually very scattered. In fact, it provides a challenge to try to get them connected using the grid expansion. Everybody lives at the different far end corner of their land. Trying to extend grid to supply to some of these communities or households become very difficult. So as a country and as a utility, our focus now is to try and map out and see what kind of solution, what kind of technology can be able to be used to adequately provide that particular energy that is those households at the moment require, vis-a-vis not just extending the grid and making it a bit expensive in the long run for them to be able to sustainably be able to afford and pay. To do this, then a number of issues in terms of technological integration in our off-grid projects come into play. All of us would appreciate the fact that project planning is one of the difficult area in terms of when you're starting up any program, any project, for you to identify and select that particular site and the technology that you're going to use to address those particular needs of the community is quite challenging. And what I've seen in terms of course, there's an integration of the Internet of Things, machine learning, and artificial intelligence in all the works that are happening within the space in terms of technological development within the space of the energy growth and access to electricity. And this is very crucial and important at this particular juncture because the kind of planning that used to happen was not really, I would say, detailed planning. And it could end up in situations where we've already found ourselves providing for electricity to different communities and households to a level that then they do not need. So it's like you're oversupplying somebody, trying to think you're sorting out a problem, but you're already creating another problem. It's becoming very, very, very costly. But using technologies like remote sensing, where you use satellites to map the positioning of the various communities, how scattered they are, you could get into small details in terms of poverty levels within those particular areas to check on the ability to pay. Then you can be able to quickly narrow down in terms of the various technologies and solutions that you can be able to offer the different communities. The other thing that we are using technology to do is on, my colleague just mentioned it a bit, is on the way we remotely control some of these systems. As you've seen the map of Kenya, most of these communities operate within the remotest part of the country. The community that actually gives us a lot of problem is the one that is bordering the Somali, the Somali government. There is no government in Somali. So, and the border is like a road, you can actually cross between Kenya and Somali. And any other time we set up a system in that part, from our utility, we send somebody to be stationed in one of our microgrid which is operated by diesel. Nobody wants to go there. So we find ourselves in a situation that the machine can be down for a month or 2 months because you cannot force somebody to go and stay in a place where tomorrow it can be, hijacked and abducted and taken to a different country for ransom. So remote control of these kinds of system is offering us an opportunity and a way of going around this particular problem. And we've already deployed some of them. We've often taken advantage of the drone technology to try and help us be able to have some presence in some of these areas which we at some point had considered to be a bit dangerous and for us to be able to reach and provide those kind of services. The other thing that is coming into play is the metering and payment and collection of money from this connected customer. Deployment of off-grid solution, as again, is not as easy as some of us think, or we could think it's a plug and play and you can make your revenues and investment there. There are quite a number of things that you must take into consideration. One of them is how do you collect this revenue from the people that you provided for these services? Money transfer in terms of M-Pesa, for those of us who have heard about it, provides a very good opportunity for us to be able to get prepayment of our services before we offer them. So we're installing systems where this particular mode of revenue collection or payment really comes into play and help us to remotely get our revenue in as much as if somebody doesn't pay, you can remotely switch them off without you being present there, and then your investment is safe. Last and not least is issues related to network management and maintenance. Data is very important, and in most cases, again, the location of these particular mini-grids is a challenge. And to overcome that, the issue of remote access to information and data relating to the customer demand, customer needs then becomes very important. And that we've seen technology come into play in terms of assisting us to be able to do that remotely without having any problem. So there's a lot that we can be able to get from the technology, and still a lot that has not been done in terms of going forward into the future. Metering and payment solutions that we have, especially on the post-paid customer. If you come to Africa, KPLC, for example, Kenya Power is almost 100 years old. And most of our meters that we have on our customers are the post-paid analog meters that keep us going, and we have to send somebody to go and read them and get bills, which at some point raises issues with our customers. What we need out there in terms of guys who are working in the technology area is to come up with a solution that can change or can be embedded upon the existing analog systems, existing post-paid meters, without changing them to smart, because of course we don't have the kind of capital to change all those meters into smart meters. We need a solution that can be applicable right away and give us less human intervention, but get the correct information that we want for proper metering and monitoring of our equipment out there. The other thing where I think we have an opportunity as guys in the technology market is to look for customer applications that can help us monitor the balancing in terms of energy demand and energy supply. We have, I've seen a number of applications come out there. For example, the GridWatch. For those of us who have an opportunity to read about it, which helps you to monitor the reliability of power supply. An application, you put it on your phone, at any given point in time when your phone is on or off, it can easily tell you when you have a flicker in the supply, voltage drops and those kinds of stuff, and send that particular information to the utilities. That is a very important step to try to ensure that we are on check in terms of the reliability and the quality of supply that we are pushing out into the industry. So that is an area where there's still room. If somebody can come up with an application, a customer app that can actually do that, I think that is something that can go a long way to help most of the utilities in Africa. The other thing is on demand growth prediction and intelligence, energy demand supply balance. That is an issue that is out there. Most of our planning, as I said earlier, is based on government policies, political decisions. There is no scientific manner in which then you could say you can predict demand the way it's going to move forward. So if we can come up with technologies and ways of doing this in a manner that is scientific, that can be able to enable us balance most probably demand and supply in certain areas, that could be very useful. Last and not least, but not the least, is the measure of reliability and customer feedback. Customer feedback is important for us to be able to check on where we are and where we need to go. We need guys to move in terms of technology, to come up with applications that can be able to give us those kinds of results in a way that is cost-effective and in a sustainable manner that can help the utilities. I'm speaking from the utilities perspective, to be able to provide that reliable and service that is required out there. Thank you very much.
Discussion, and I'll make a few brief remarks before I introduce my panelists. So you've had a taste of an energy revolution that actually is in play and is taking place in Africa today, powered by the increasing affordability of clean energy technologies, as well as the application of innovative business models. Range of innovative enterprises now deploy off-grid energy systems in places that the grid has failed to reach. They utilize IoT technologies for remote monitoring, control systems, employ advanced data analytics to identify and track frontier markets, provide access to finance through cutting-edge fintech innovations. Despite the promise, intractable operational, technological, financial, and other challenges remain. And the global entrepreneurs are tackling these challenges to provide a shining example of, let's call it, tech for good. Their trailblazing efforts are transforming how energy is produced, distributed, and used in the global south, making the way for individuals that have been left behind for decades to prosper with access to clean energy for communities. And so I'm delighted to have with us a stellar group of panelists who will bring this to life for us. To my left, we have Grace Mbungu. Grace is a junior fellow at the Institute for Advanced Sustainability Studies in Potsdam, Germany. Aaron Leopold is to Grace's left. Aaron is the Chief Executive Officer of the African Mini-Grid Developers Association based in Nairobi. And to Aaron's left is Ife Malo. Ife is the Nigeria Country Director of Power for All and CEO of Cleantech Hub, Abuja. I will ask each of the panelist members to make a brief comments on their perspectives, 2 to 3 minutes perhaps, or a little longer. And then I will have a few questions for each of the panelists. And after that, I'll call upon the speakers who have already made the presentations up on the stage, and we'll open it up to the audience for further questions and answers. So before we get there, perhaps I would like to ask maybe Ife, if you would like to make a few brief early comments before we have some questions.
Thank you, Jetling. I'm very happy to be here this evening. Just very briefly, Clean Technology Hub started out of frustration working in a system that didn't recognize off-grid renewable energy as a part of the energy access equation in sub-Saharan Africa, and more specifically in Nigeria. And this happened when I was working for the Nigerian government. But over time, we have seen a shift the past 5 years, where we have gone from talking about the grid as the only way to grow our energy systems to looking at the off-grid energy sector as a viable business model to achieve energy and electricity access for all. So, where we stand at the hub is on the cups of renewable energy and climate change, looking at climate adaptation and mitigation, but also renewable energy as the quickest and fastest way to achieve energy access. And one of the things that has happened over time is having a coalition of private sector investors, government, and civil society coming together to realize that decentralized renewable energy, issues around storage, issues around efficiencies and scale, and issues around artificial intelligence are actually the ways to grow the sector. So this is where clean technology comes in, because you're seeing a coalition of different technologies, the Internet of Things, policy making, and investments coming together to actually make sure that communities are beginning to get access to energy that they need to grow their livelihoods and to improve their livelihoods. So for us, I think in Nigeria, and I bring my Nigerian hat into the room, is that this change has only happened in the past 5 years. We've talked a lot about renewable energy for a long time, but it hasn't really caught on except for the past 5 years. And we've seen how technology has been an enabler to make that happen as quickly as possible, because 5 years wasn't very long ago. So that's just my brief opening comments, and I'll expand more on that as we go.
Thank you, Ife. Aaron, would you like to make some comments?
Yeah, thank you so much. It's a real privilege and an honor to be here, especially to talk on such a really exciting topic. So I live in Nairobi. Grace is Kenyan, but I'm claiming your Kenyan hat. You've got your Nigerian hat, but we're sharing the Kenyan hat tonight. Nairobi is a really cool city. It's nicknamed the Silicon Savannah because of the Cleantech and the innovative software engineering space that exists there today. And it's the headquarters of a number of East African energy companies, not only KPLC, as Samson just described, but another set of really innovative software engineering companies that are focusing on energy consultancies, and mini-grid companies, which are focused on community electrification from the bottom up. And I think the really exciting thing about working on energy in Africa at the moment is that we're doing stuff it's really not even happening here in North America, here in Europe, I think it was Sebastian mentioned, mobile money in Eastern Africa is the primary mode of monetary transactions. Before there was Apple Pay, there was M-Pesa. That's where it all started, with Safaricom, the mobile telecom operator in East Africa. And through the Internet of Things and through mobile money payments across the continent, we are seeing the remote monitoring that was discussed before in all of the different presentations that we just had. And it's allowing us to start working on building the grid from the bottom up by going to the communities that Kenya Power can't go to and installing household connections for cheaper than many urban areas are electrified across the continent because of the Internet of Things, because of the innovative people and technologies that are coming into the sector. The cool thing about working on renewable energy in Africa is that you have all these crazy smart electrical engineers, power system engineers that have a really limited space to go into within the public sector energy world. But there's this growing space of private sector energy companies. Ife just told me before that she went from 3 employees 2 years ago to 20 right now, and they're all kick-ass and under 30. And this is the future of energy in Africa, and this is the energy space and the clean tech space. So we're really moving as a sector to revolutionize the face of the African continent, because what we've kind of come from is a limited set of options where you had one power provider because there was only one type of technology, the top-down. And right now, we have a variety of different technologies that include the top-down, which will always be necessary, but we have rooftop solar systems. We have solar lanterns that also charge your phone. We have the mini-grid companies. We have the biogasification that was talked about before. And it's really when we see this combination of different things that allows us to do integrated energy planning, to allow the best technology for the situation at hand, whether it's an island community or a city that still has black spots every once in a while because of the heavy demand from the industrial zone over there. You can build a mini grid in the middle of the city, and that's fine because we know how to interconnect them today. And the options for managing those systems are being developed by software engineers in the very same places, or by the interns that are coming from Waterloo, as Sebastian mentioned as well. But yeah, I mean, I just talked about how exciting it is to work in this space right now, but what are we doing? I'll just wrap this up because I know I've rambled for a bit here. But the Africa Mini Grid Developers Association exists to talk about these types of opportunities. So I represent community electrification companies from around the continent that are doing this work to be partners in progress with utilities. So they are starting at the last mile. They are not competing with utilities. They are offering them a solution to bring power back into those hard-to-reach areas, to balance the load, to provide service, reliability, and stability where there has been no service before, or where the service had been so spotty that businesses would rather just buy a diesel generator than connect to the grid. So we're really both adding value and helping create the future of this sort of Internet of Things that's about an energy system of things in this sense. And I think Grace can talk more about the kind of the micro and urban entrepreneurship side of things, but it's really, at the end of the day, all about the customers. And I think that was mentioned by Peter as well, that what we've seen so far in energy provision is that we're a utility doing a job. And what the real revolution is that we're coming around to now is that we're service providers working with customers. And this is not something that has been seen in many places in Africa before, because we've really seen to date a kind of relationship that's more about beneficiaries and not so much about understanding the needs of the people. It's been more about throwing a solution at a problem. But is it the right solution? Well, you don't know unless you listen. And I think that's an important change that we're seeing now as well.
Thanks, Aaron. You brought in an interesting idea. I call it inverting the triangle, if you wish. This is not only an African problem, it's here as well. This notion that, understand your customer first and how you need to get the service to him before you develop a system for them. Grace, if you'd like to make a few observations before we do some questions.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here. I bring to the panel the social aspect of energy access. When we look at energy, we think about technologies, we think about deploying a technology or infrastructure, but the way I look at energy myself is looking at a service that actually enables people to do something and to improve their lives. And I look at that by looking at the social dynamics of energy. So I look at, for example, what do those people actually need, and how can we develop technologies that actually fit the needs of the people, instead of sitting in a small circle and thinking, okay, I think we have that kind of knowledge, we can develop a certain kind of technology, and maybe such people are going to adopt it. I'm very motivated by the fact that we've been trying to solve the cooking problem now for 40 years. And I saw that as a young child growing up, my mother working with people, installing stoves and trying to get people to use these kinds of stove. But when I look back now to her, she doesn't actually use an improved cook stove. Yet she has that kind of knowledge, she has tried it, she's used it, and 20 years later, she thinks that it doesn't serve a purpose. So she just abandons that and tries to use the kind of things that really she feels really is serving her needs, and the needs not just of cooking for the kids, but also as a societal, as social needs. So when you look at energy needs, I think we don't need to look at them in such a way that it's boxed. We have to look in a broader sense. We have to look at it as, we are providing a service to serve households or communities, but the idea of it is to actually meet a certain goal. And we have to start from the goal that we actually want to meet and who these people that are meeting the goal are. So we have to sort of try to re-innovate ourselves or innovate our own thinking before we innovate new technologies or before even we deploy the current technologies that exist. Because if we don't do that, I think we're going to get back into the vicious cycle of trying that, and then finding that actually we don't have any solution after 2030. So I think we narrow down to the humanity and why the humanity actually needs energy. And then from that point of view, we can be able to develop more integrated and more acceptable technologies for that matter.
Thank you. If I may pick up on the discussion, I have a few questions, but perhaps let's go to this issue that you just highlighted around the social dimension of the energy access issue, the human element, if you wish. We all recognize that energy access, or lack thereof, there's a vicious cycle of energy poverty that feeds, and that this is a multi-layered problem with different attributes in different contexts. The question I have for you, and any one of you can jump in, but perhaps Grace or Ifi or even Aaron, what role do you see here for women to take charge and to take what I would call a leading role in either creating sustainable energy businesses or help shape the pathways for productive use of energy in their homes or communities? So I want to focus in on the women and the gender part of it, because I know the large inequity exists there as well in the current situation. So what role do you see that they can help shape us here?
I think just to talk about that, part of it is looking at energy as an entire system. For example, we are currently have talked about so much about electricity, access to electricity, and we've not even included cooking in that context.
Okay.
So, we've left out 60% of the world population energy consumption, because looking at the African context or the needs that actually currently exist, it's mainly cooking. Right. So the first almost 80% of energy consumption in the African continent is actually needed for cooking. And so once the panel here has already sort of excluded that context. So I think the idea moving forward is to actually approach energy in the context of an holistic context. So when you talk about energy, you just don't talk about electricity, but you include all possibilities that kind of energy can be used for. Because as Samson has said, there is very good energy supply in Kenya, and most of it is not being used. Because people don't see an opportunity in using grid electricity to cook, for example. So they don't see that as part of their package of opportunity, and so they don't, for example, take that as an important opportunity. And that is tapping so much into women's issues and women's empowerment, and it also takes care of a very huge population, for example, young children, sick people, and in the community, because you think about it, women are the ones cooking, women are the ones who are taking care of the people that are sick at home, and women are the ones who are raising kids. So you're looking at 80% of the population energy needs not being met currently when we talk about just electricity.
So there's a central critical role well recognized for women in this. I'm mindful of time, and so I have many questions, but I'll ask one, and then I would like to draw in the speakers and of course the audience as well. So, but one question I would like to turn to perhaps Aaron around this whole issue of let's just call it the emphasis on investment. Who funds it? How is it funded? Private investment, whether it's venture capital or impact investors or any other combination thereof. In this financing calculus of energy investments, how do you translate the value in terms of economic empowerment of individuals or economic development of communities against this harsh metric, which is shareholder return on that invested capital, and I want the return as fast as I want? What are your thoughts on that?
Just let me also give a quick anecdote on the gender and energy dimension. So before I was brought on to run the Mini-Grid Developers Association, I was the global representative of a charity who was also active in Kenya called Practical Action, and we ran the continent's first ever gender audit of the energy policies of the government of Kenya. And one of the interesting things that we found out was that not only is it about energy businesses and customer relations, but it's about the policies being biased in their attitudes towards customer needs as well. So many of the energy plans did not really adequately plan for street lighting, for instance. And in many communities across sub-Saharan Africa, people still do not have indoor toilets. Many times there's the need to go walk to acquire firewood or do other things outside after dark because it's dark at about 7 o'clock at night in much of the continent. And it's very unsafe to walk around at night because of animals, because of dangerous people, because there's a hole in the ground, right? So this is just one simple example of how energy policies can themselves be biased in one particular way or another, unintentionally or not. It's still a problem, right? And the other thing is that oftentimes in starting businesses, women are more likely than men to be unbanked, to not have bank accounts. And that is fundamental to having a credit history, to being able to access a loan to start your small business or whatnot. So there's many more elements to the gender bias within the energy context than just having a business that understands the needs of a woman, right? It's about that broader ecosystem, that holistic view that Grace was talking about. There's so many things stacked against women in many contexts. But that also goes to your question kind of on the side of how to get investment as well, and what should investors be talking about. So the very short answer to your question, because I gave a long answer to the question that you didn't ask me, is simply that what we're focusing on is twofold, but it's a dichotomous choice. We're saying we're going to build small energy businesses, and that we're going to provide universal energy access. But if you're going to be a business, that means you have to make money. And if you're going to provide universal access, that means you have to go to the places that are going to lose you money. Because universal means that hard-to-reach place over there, and a successful business means I'm going to focus on the profits where they are. And because you have this dichotomous choice, that means that you have to bridge that gap, that affordability gap somehow. And so either we need to get away from this mantra of private sector will somehow serve the poorest people who we have ever talked about reaching, or we have to say that we're going to charge those poor people a hell of a lot of money to access this service.
It's a tough dilemma.
It's a tough dilemma, but the solution is really that we should do what we've always done and provide public support to reach the hardest and most marginalized, right? And in Africa at the moment, there's many people here from an Africa Energy Conference, but for the people who aren't from that conference, the big kind of issue of the day has been that we're trying to find private sector-driven solutions to reach these most marginalized people. But over the past 5 years, we've seen that, guess what? Poor people are poor, rural electrification is complicated, and it's not really working. So we have to come back to that public support model that's always been needed.
Let me give Iffy a chance if you want to make an observation. If not, that's okay.
Yeah, just very quickly, and to address some of the comments that Grace and Aaron have made, both on the gender and the financing aspect. And I agree completely with Grace that, the whole cooking aspect is left out of the conversation around energy access. But we are trying to address that in Nigeria because it's, like we mainstream cooking, energy access and cooking into the whole energy access conversation. But even more importantly, one of the things we've realized is that representation matters. So a lot of people, when I started this work in the energy sector, it was very usual to be the only Cinderella in the room. It was an old boys network. We have, at the Hub and at Power for All in Nigeria, consciously done a lot of work to change that. And that has been through consciously hiring women. For instance, at the Hub where we have 20 people working for us, 16 of them are women. Out of those 16, 10 of them are female engineers. And that has been deliberate because, we deliberately hire women. And part of the reason why is because when you're talking about energy access, it wears energy poverty, it wears a gendered face. It's a very female-gendered problem. And you can't go into those communities and teach women how to use those energy or help them understand how to better improve their lives if it's somebody that doesn't look like them. So what we have done is consciously get people who actually can speak the same language to teach them how to use this energy access, right? And we've seen it working. For instance, one of the things we're doing is trying to teach women, market women, many of them uneducated, how to sell Pico solar lanterns as fast-moving consumer goods. And right now, you would go into any store just the same way you'd be able to buy a torchlight, because these stores are manned by women, mainly women in the open market spaces. And you would see a Pico solar lantern, because we've been able to convince them to do that. And I completely agree, moving very quickly to the financing structure, I completely agree with Aaron. Governments across sub-Saharan Africa have to put their money where their mouth is. They have to be able to back a lot of the renewable energy projects, especially the mini-grid projects that are coming in. Because if you're talking about last mile and rural communities, you cannot expect them to pay the same amount of money that you would want in terms of you need patient capital first and foremost. And if you need patient capital, you need to assure the investors about the reasons why they should bring that patient capital into your country. This is why, giving some guarantees to those investors are so important. Okay. And we see that that's becoming a required need, especially in the mini-grid sector. So that's something we certainly advocate for.
Let's bring in the audience now, mindful of time. So I'd like to encourage or ask Peter, Sebastian, and Samson to come to the stage as well and open the discussion up to members of the audience. There will be runners along with microphones so please identify yourself, raise your hand if you have a question, and you may ask your question to either any one of the panel members or speakers, or ask a general question, and we will see who on the panel would like to respond to your question. So I encourage any and all of you to raise your hand and ask a question. So there's one right here that I see. Thank you.
Plays such a pivotal role. What is the role of, are there any infrastructures in place on collecting data on energy supply in African countries? And if not, how are you mitigating the loss or absence of data?
The question, did you direct it to anyone, or is this a general question around data and perhaps Samson, or maybe
I'll take that. Okay, I think data is very important. And remember when I talked about artificial intelligence and the machine learning thing, all that would require data. And I'll speak about my institution or my company. We have in our place put in place business intelligence system that gathers all the information about our customers. We have a history that is dated more than 90 years. In terms of all the consumption patterns of the customers, we have geo-referenced all our customers where they are. We can be able to remotely, not yet fully, be able to control the activities around in areas where we have smart meters, so that then we have all that information centralized in what we call an enterprise data warehouse, so that then any other time we need this particular information specifically about a customer or the network activity reliability data, because even by law, we are supposed to send certain information about the reliability of the system to the regulators. That has to be put in place. So we have a very good, I would say for the utilities, a very good data warehouse that all the information is being stored.
And for the mini-grid side, so we have, as an industry association, we're creating a database of, it's a first of its kind, of different key performance indicators from all of the mini-grid companies, all the villages that they electrify from across the continent, to give governments and planners such as Samson tools for the first time ever to really understand in a benchmarking way, where the companies in their country stand vis-a-vis the utility in terms of system reliability, in terms of cost, in terms of how to integrate with utilities, et cetera. So it's also something that's emerging as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience? Do I see a hand somewhere? There's one I see over there. Oh, there's two. Right. Okay, and then we'll come to you.
The first is the issue of bureaucratization. We talk about Cleantech. I'm from Africa, and there's a lot of bureaucracy, especially when it comes to government and stuff like that. So how does one navigate, like a Cleantech entrepreneur, navigate the issue of government bureaucracy? That's question one. The second question is about resource costs. There's a standoff between Somalia and Kenya at the moment, Angola. There's a lot of oil exploration that's going on in Africa, yet we are here talking about Cleantech. So how can Africa deal with resource costs and the conflict that results from those resource costs? Those two questions.
Okay, I can take the question around navigating bureaucracy. Like I said, we started the hub out of our frustrations around this exact issue of bureaucracy. But one of the things that we found is that partnerships matter. And they matter because that's the way that you're able to overcome some of these bureaucracies that you talk about. Even as somebody who worked with the Nigerian government, sometimes we find it difficult to sort of navigate some of the political issues that happen with governments and energy access and energy policies and planning. I'll give you an instance. 2 years ago, I was part of the Waterloo Institute for Sustainable Energy A4H lab. And people came to us because they wanted to do projects in Nigeria. Using a lot of our contacts in the energy sector and working with the Nigerian government, we were able to get them what they needed. One of the things about working with governments in Africa is that we have a lot of plans and policies. People just don't know where they're domiciled or who the right person is to go help them get them. So if you do have hubs like ours that can help you navigate those bureaucracies, it does help. And that's partly why we have grown from 3 to 20, because we're finding that we need more and more people to sort of go sift things out of government offices. And that's where those partnerships work, right? So it's all about partnership, collaboration, and finding the right people who can get you what you need. But this is where data is actually going to help, because once we have some level of data transparency as well, you wouldn't have to have as much human beings having to go into offices to get those things. I mean, it's just going to be, present, and people are actually going to be able to get that data when and if they need them. And the other question that you asked about resource control, we want to make it very clear that even as an oil-producing country, we do believe that there's going to be space for fossil fuel as part of our generating and energy power systems. We're not saying that they are not going to exist, but they're going to exist to solve or to function for large manufacturing plants. What decentralized renewable energy would do is to get energy to the last mile communities and to the people who need them. And even for the people who live in the cities but don't have energy reliability, so who have only 3 or 4 hours a day of electricity just because there isn't enough to go around. So if we're generating only 3,000 megawatts in Nigeria for a country of 200 million, there's just no way that energy is going to be enough. Why don't we just allow the big grid systems that are fossil-fired to actually provide energy for the large manufacturing plants, and then use decentralized renewable energy, microgrids and mini-grids to power homes and communities. That's what we're actually talking about here.
Just maybe to add a little bit to that, I think you also bring the complexity of energy access. I mean, you're talking about resource control, which is with governance and institutions, and we're talking about bureaucracy, which you also have to really recognize that it's not just the formal sector, but we're also talking about a huge informal sector that is wielding a lot of power in the developing country context, and all you have to navigate, not just in the sense informal, but also local, already established groups that you have to negotiate with to be able to actually access communities. And I think those are very important issues when you talk about energy. You think technology, damn, it's done. But I think we have to look at both the social aspect and contextual aspects of energy access, which which technologies doesn't necessarily light.
I think we have time for one question, maybe two max. There was a hand I had seen. Oh, Peter, did you want to comment on that?
Well, what I was going to say about the resource curse, side of things is most of these huge oil and gas companies are actually quite big in the renewable energy sector. You look at Shell, you look at Total. In Uganda, where we are, Total's actually helped us a lot to get where we have got to. They're able to partner with us. So if they're putting a pipeline somewhere, we go and work with the rural communities around the pipeline that they're putting up. If we want to sell carbon credits, they're probably the first people to buy those carbon credits. If we're trying to get solar panels, we can probably get them cheaper from Total or Shell. So through partnership, as she said, it's possible to actually navigate a lot of these. And the other thing is just to be innovative and take initiative. Because if your country hasn't yet made that move as an entrepreneur and as a group of entrepreneurs, you've just got to figure out how to make it work. And it works out in the end. It's always painful for the trailblazer, but in the long run, the people and the economy benefit.
Thank you. I had seen one hand somewhere over here. Yes, perhaps that will be the last question for the evening. Thank you.
First of all, thank you so much for everyone to come out to speak. So the main topic has predominantly been on connecting the grid and getting more people online and access to energy. Could either one of you please speak to energy conservation and how that movement is taking part?
I can jump in on that if no one else wants to. In Africa, there isn't a generation problem. There's generally a transmission and a distribution problem. You have small generation points and a huge continent. And every kilometer of wire is more expensive, more further than the last, right? So energy efficiency is actually really important. Not necessarily conservation, but efficiency. And so I think that, yes, conservation is important for a country that has generation challenges, but that's not often the case, or at least it's decreasingly the case. And I think what we're actually rather looking at in Africa is trying to figure out how to require less generation so that the governments have lower cost overall for their energy systems, and super efficient appliances are the answer in that sense. But that creates this really complicated relationship for Kenya Power, for mini grid companies, because we're trying to sell electrons. And if you're trying to sell electrons, and then other people are trying to use less electrons, this is a business problem, right? So what we need to do is potentially change to different service models, which we're already starting to see. Your mobile phone package, you might have unlimited data or unlimited minutes, right? Whether you use 50 minutes or 5,000 minutes, the company that's selling you those minutes is banking on that their customers on average are going to use a lower amount, right? So if we change in the energy sector to a similar type of system where you're paying a monthly fee for X, then you can get super efficient TVs, super efficient appliances, and then conservation becomes automatic, right? So I think this is kind of how we need to think about it moving forward. Even in Western economies, we're going to start paying for a service rather than paying for a kilowatt.
And the other thing on the conservation side, if you look at energy beyond electricity and beyond clean cooking to locomotion. So we've got the grid, you've got the big power plants, we've got the cities with all the manufacturing going on in there. We've got all the raw materials coming from the rural areas. So there's obviously inefficiencies in getting raw materials from the rural areas 1,000 miles into the cities to transform them. But at the same time, if you're going to take your grid to rural areas, 1,000 miles of grid connection is $1 billion. So how do you do that? So the mini-grids become a solution. If you have mini-grids with productive power in rural areas, if you find a way to bring the costs of power in those mini-grids much lower, it ends up being like a marriage of both. You're doing the efficiency by removing the need to transport and use more fuel, but you're also adding the generation and transmission in that smaller localized area. So it's kind of a marriage of both, really.
Thank you. And I think that's all the time we have this evening. It was a great primer for our Innovation Lab discussion this week. Please join me in thanking our speakers and panelists one more time for their contribution.